When it comes to your financial advisor, how do you know if he or she is doing a good job or not, and how do you avoid the really bad ones? Well, my next guest knows a lot about it. Steve Scanlon is a financial strategist. He's with GuardVest.com, which actually is known as the Carfax report for your portfolio, and for finding out if your financial analyst knows what he's doing. Steve, thank you for joining us this evening.
You bet. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Yeah, great having you here. Now this issue in general, like when you are looking for a financial advisor, is there any kind of warning signs you should look out for right away?
Well, I think a lot of times what you could find is somebody that has a cookie-cutter approach that will ultimately just say, here's what I do for all of my clients, and spends the majority of the time talking about what they do and very little time talking about what you do. That's a really big red flag. Because everybody's got a different situation.
Okay, that's a good piece of advice. And so they're not asking a lot of questions. They're just telling you what the deal is. Is that it?
They're telling you what the deal is, and they're taking you through a presentation. I mean, if you think about it, it's really hard to distinguish what one advisor does versus another. I mean, let's face it, we all, I mean, I've been in the business now for 20 years. I mean, we tend to, sort of have the same conversations about diversification and holistic and tax management and a lot of charts and graphs. And it's hard to really distinguish who's really good and who's bad based on looking at a presentation. So you really have to determine if they know anything about you or if they're just trying to put you in their asset allocation model and move on to the next prospect.
20 years in the business. How did you get into financial strategizing?
Just right out of college, I started to go to work for one of the biggest insurance companies in the country, and then went to work for one of the biggest money managers in the world, and ran their business in New York for several years, and then came back to Dallas to run their private client practice, and just got a little bit disenchanted with that business and felt like investors were so kept in the dark and didn't have any idea what their fees were, what their risk was, what their returns were. And indexes have really started to beat most active managers, and you can buy an index for pennies on the dollar. And trust me, I think good financial advisors are worth it for sure. And I think most people benefit by having a good financial advisor. The problem is, do you have a good one or do you have a bad one? They're all likable, right? I mean, the industry hires likable people, but that doesn't mean they're good.
Well, you said most people don't know what their fees are, their returns. Is that on the advisor or on the person themselves for not knowing?
I would challenge any investor. I literally haven't run into one that I know that could tell me exactly what they pay in total expenses to have their money professionally managed. And I've been doing this, as I mentioned, for a long, long time.
Okay. Is that part of the design of the system, though, to keep people in the dark?
Absolutely. It's a matter of somebody saying, so Michael, if I ask you, most investors ask the question this way, if you're my financial advisor, I ask you, what are you charging me to manage my money? And what you tell me is what you charge me. And you charge me, let's say, 1%. But then what also happens is you take my money and you invest it with other money managers, and they also charge a fee. And then there's transaction costs and administrative fees called 12b-1 fees. The real question is, Mr. and Mrs. Advisor, what do I pay in total to have my money professionally managed by you and the managers you hire?
Okay,
because that's a very different answer.
What percentage should that really be in the when you add it all up?
Well, I mean, again, it's all about what you keep in your pocket. So, I mean, I'd pay somebody 2% if I was getting 10, and I was keeping 8 of that. But here's the bigger problem. The big problem is that the last 5 years the market has pretty much shot straight up, and bonds have been okay. That's not going to look anything. The next 5 years are going to look anything like the last 5 years. And so what used to get you, if you had a portfolio that used to get you around 8.5% to 9%, is now going to get you 5.5 maybe, and yet the fees are still the same. So I always tell people it's like this. If you, in this environment, are still paying 8.5% on your mortgage, you are losing a ton of money. And so if I'm going to refinance my mortgage to put more money in my pocket because rates have gone down, why wouldn't you do the same thing with the fees in your advisory account?
Can you actually do that with a financial advisor?
Absolutely.
Okay. How does that work?
You find a new one. But you go in and say, do you offer discounts, and am I getting the full discounts that you offer?
Oh, especially during times that are less, positive as they have been in the last 5 years, you're saying?
Right, and what we do is basically show the investor a confidential evaluation, so your advisor has no idea that you're doing this, and we give them a report card. So let's take, index funds are very inexpensive, and I'm not telling you should buy them or not buy them. I'm just saying that index funds are inexpensive, and so what you could get for 0.1% needs to be losing to what you're paying 2% a year for. In other words, if my advisor's charging me 2 and can't outperform something that's 0.1%, then I have a problem. And candidly, a lot of people have that problem.
Okay, so at GuardVest.com, what are you doing exactly? Are you saying you're able to see a detailed report of what a person's financial advisor is up to?
Right. In about 1 minute, you basically can see a report card on your advisor, and it tells you what your total expenses are, it tells you what your risk is, and it gives you your returns versus a basic index. And so, there's thousands of articles written every single year that tell people they should just buy low-cost index funds, thousands. And so what we're doing is basically personalizing that for each investor to say, okay, if you had 60% stocks, 40% bonds, just in an index fund,
right,
here's what you'd be getting.
So are you saying someone's better off simply going that route, a low-cost index fund? I'm
saying that they should know that if you go to index funds, you're technically not really getting advice. But because you're paying for advice, you need to know what that differential is.
Okay, now how often are financial advisors doing better than these low-cost index funds?
Rarely. 87% of active managers do not beat their indexes, which cost about 0.1%.
Okay, so they're not doing any better, and you're getting charged a bunch of fees. Is that what you're saying?
In a lot of situations, that's right. Now, good ones, again, are adding a lot of value. They're adding a lot of of performance, and they're not charging you an arm and a leg. But the problem is with returns coming down and fees still staying the same, the client is getting ready to get taken advantage of, in my opinion, at a significant level.
Steve Scanlon, financial strategist, the website GuardVest.com. Find out exactly how your financial advisor is doing and if you maybe can do better without him. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.